Well, good evening, everybody. This is the first blog we've done, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I was prepared. I just thought it'd be interesting to put a live video up. Um, Current thoughts on my mind today. One of them being, I really don't know if I want to. I guess really don't know if I want to talk politics. Um, Maybe some other things. I don't know, my thoughts on how I feel about different subjects. Um, Not sure what I have in mind at the moment. um, I did sit here and I guess what I can say is like one thing I do a lot and very often is watch videos on YouTube. Um, it's really been pretty thought provoking. And one of the things I really think about is how people uh, basically consume things like YouTube. Um, to me, it's really a lot like eating. Whenever you go out to find something to eat, you go. Where are you going to go? You're going to go to a restaurant that's your favorite. You might try something new occasionally, but generally, you're gonna, you know, more oftentimes than not, in general, I guess I should say, you'll probably go to, a restaurant you're familiar with, a place where you know that you're going to enjoy the food, you're going to like what they serve there. I really view that as kind of being the same thing about how people approach things like the news media they listen to and the things they believe in, the things they go searching for. I really think about this a lot because, honestly, I don't find myself to be any more uh, well, I can't say I'm not, or I can't say I'm immune to this type of thinking. Um, I am a human being, and I'm more comfortable with the things that I'm, used to, the things I grew up around, or the people or events or places, things I'm comfortable with, even down, like food, if you want, there's food that you like, then that's what you're going to pick. In this day and age, though, I think one of the, I mean, I'm 48 years old. And when I look back on the past and the things that I've been through and the ideologies I've, been exposed to and things I've thought about, one of the things is this one type of thinking where it's like there's this all inclusiveness, and it's to me interesting concept, but it makes me think about some people kind of tend to take an altruistic approach to it, basically meaning, kind of an all or nothing ideology about it. If we're going to accept people, we should accept everyone. But that's kind of a very broad statement to make, I think. I mean, there are things that some people do and say that I would not consider to be right or appropriate. Real easy ones, murder. If you got somebody that wants to go around murdering everybody, you wouldn't want to be sitting there saying, well, that's acceptable, because it's not. Nobody wants to be killed. That's an easy thing. The harder things, I think, are more along lines the things that, Maybe they're things that we feel good about, but because the fallout, their social ramifications are so slow to come about to where we actually experience damage. A lot of people just don't worry about it, or they're just ignoring the actual consequences, just for the sake of getting to do what they want to do that makes them feel good. I really kind of find that to be, me personally, I'm the type of person a little bit more conservative leaning. I really do try to be moderate. And I mainly try to be moderate because I really kind of believe in the concept of mercy. I do have my religious beliefs. I believe in Christ. I believe in God. And I have read the Bible, and there's teachings in the Bible about, it's really about how to get through life. Not going to make this a religious discussion, even though religion does play an important part in a lot of people's lives. And there's some, a lot of things said about religion, both positive and negative. Though I would have to counter that with, you can find a positive and negative about anything. And I think that's a little bit more of a concept that we probably all should understand. Maybe we all do understand. Though I think some people don't fully understand that there is a negative connotation as well as a positive. Or, like I said, some people just focus on what they're getting out of it, the positive, and don't think about the negatives. Case in point, if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol or something like that, usually the answer is to get away from the negatives is just more drugs and alcohol. You feel fine for a while, but it doesn't last for very long. You come off of the high, then you're right back to, well, there's the negative things in your life that were causing you to say, oh, I need to take drugs, or I need to drink, or I need to engage in something that distracts me away from facing the realities of life. And it's a tough thing to think about. And as I'm saying these things, obviously, if it's something that I'm thinking about, I'm concerned about, it's something I think about in my own life. And which is another thing, we all kind of tend to project the things that we're going through on each other. It's the things we're thinking about, we understand the most, or we're thinking about the most. Human beings are kind of a complicated mess. I took a college course on technical writing, and the teacher of the course made a very astute observation, something that has stuck with me, that we as human beings are all engaged in rhetoric. Rhetoric, from a historical standpoint, it was a practice by ancient Greeks. And I'm just saying this by memory. So if you look at me and say you're talking out of your butt, then, I might just be, because, human memories are not always the best unless you got a photographic memory. But anyhow, rhetoric is actually the practice of engaging in making arguments to convince somebody that what you're saying is true or correct. The thing about rhetoric, though, is that it does not need to be a true and correct thing that you're discussing or arguing with somebody about. The point of rhetoric is to convince or win an argument. It's winning an argument without, really, you may be completely lying and fighting in an angle that's not even something you believe in. But if you were good enough at rhetoric, you could convince people. And it's kind of one of the things like um, lawyers use it. I mean, you think about it, you have two people in a courtroom, the defendant and the prosecutor. The prosecutor is trying to uh, accuse the defendant of doing something that's wrong, that was wrong, and proving it. So the defendant has to pay for the things they had done, you know. So, of course, they say in the language of allegedly done because it hadn't been proven yet. However, the defendant has a lawyer, if they don't defend themselves, where they're doing their best to convince the judge or the jury that they are not guilty of the things they're being accused of. Well, all I can say is like, not everybody on this planet is the most honest people in the world. And if you get somebody that, actually was guilty of the crime they were being accused of, it doesn't make, if they can argue their way out of it, they'll win the case. And, when it was one of the, that's the one thing that makes me realize what the meaning of the statue of justice is. Though I think usually the connotation is like, the statue of justice is wearing a blindfold and has a scale. And the concept is that, the justice doesn't care about, the surface impression. They only care about the facts. Well, the thing about justice too is that you just can't see the truth. You're having to judge the truth after the fact. They present evidence, and testimonies and everything else like that, and that can be kind of crazy too, because it's well established fact that 5 people can observe the same event, but they'll have 5 different versions of what they saw, all based off of their own interpretation that's due to their own view of things. Maybe it could be a whole wealth of things. Maybe for some reason the people involved in the person involved in the accident, one particular person didn't like them. It could be race, it could be they know them, it could be anything else like that, and they would not give a very favorable reporting of the situation. Somebody who's an uninterested bystander will just give you their impression still through their own filter. And if somebody knew the victim and really liked them, might give a very favorable impression of them. And it happens all the time. It's really been a thing that you see prominently nowadays, especially with people who, have run-ins with the law. Somebody gets arrested, somebody gets shot, by the police. And what comes out? Well, of course, their family gets questioned, and they're like, oh, so-and-so is a very good person, always nice to me, always kind, and everything like that. And if you think about it, I mean, are people typically mean and nasty and stealing and doing bad things to their family? No. We may do it to other people who are not family, but we're not going to do that to somebody who is. And that's typically, there are people that would, send their family throw the family under the bus and just say, I don't like you, I don't care. You know, my grandfather was very fond to say his saying was, family is people you love, but the people that can do you the most damage too. Um, maybe not the most positive thing in the world, but it's kind of like, it's kind of realistic. Sometimes your family can not always do the best thing for you. But, and that's just the thing. But when we're talking about, people who commit crimes, no, the family's not going to really say anything negative against them. And given the circumstances they may be in, and this is, something we see very prominently nowadays is, a lot of people that are committing crimes are poor. Statistically speaking, if you fall below a certain income level, I mean, yeah, you're going to get desperate. I've never been that low. I'm not speaking from experience when I say it's bad when you're very poor. All I'm really saying is that, you listen to people where it's been bad or been that situation. And all you can really do is just, take their word for it and say, yeah. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, when you don't know whether you're going to have gas or heating or a roof over your head or clothes, I mean, that's really stressful. I mean, we're getting down to like, these are the basics of survival. You don't want to go hungry. You don't want to be exposed to the elements, the things that will harm you. And it's kind of a point where it drives some people to the point of, stealing, committing crimes, breaking into houses. It builds a resentment for some people to see that, they have nothing while others have something. And while, I mean, I personally can look at somebody and say, that's sad, that's bad. I'm sorry for that, and I believe there are some people, there's a lot of, maybe a lot, I don't know. There's people in this world that they just have like misfortune handed to them, and they have a long way to dig out. On the other hand, there are people that have a lot of misfortunes they just really feel like are self-inflicted. Though it's kind of one of these things where it's like, you always hear, I mean, when I was growing up, it was about, get an education, always work hard, do the best you can, and things like that. Some people are not disciplined, are not, it's not what they wanted to do with their life. They just kind of want to live for the moment and have fun or something like that. People have different, philosophies, characters, everything else of that nature. But I think in that case, it's just kind of like, well, there's a really good explanation why fortune isn't always the same for everybody, because we don't always have the same approach to things. But I think at a more deeper level, you have to kind of look at things and say, there probably are some things that can be changed, done differently, regardless of your personality. That would improve your chances of success, I would think. And I generally say that, the tried or true things is saying, education and things of that nature. Yeah, it works. You understand the world better. You know how things work better. Education tends to take away a lot of the uncertainties, I think. When you kind of understand a little bit more about the world around you, how people work, how things work, you're not only, more understanding, you can actually probably, you'll use that knowledge to your benefit, and you'll be more successful at doing it. That's the importance of knowledge and education. Uh, Working hard, and I always interpret working hard as like, if you go out there and you're working, um, they do prefer the people that work. Anywhere you work, that's going to be the case. Um, and I'm not sure if this mic or this mic is the one. Which mic? Okay, sorry. First time doing this, I'm not sure that it's using the let me check this real quick. I don't see. Okay. Well, I hope the audio is working. I do other recordings for different things, and hope it works. Or hope you can hear me. At any rate, but it's kind of really, I think is really, where I'm getting at is like figuring out why people have misfortunes. And, you can sit there and say some people are born with the silver spoon. And I'm kind of like, a lot of people that are born with the silver spoon, they're not successful themselves. Eventually they run out of the money, and the money is not theirs. It's their parents' money, which were the ones that really were successful. That, a lot of times parents work up from the bottom, get a lot of money, and then the kids are, when they grow up, they never knew what it was like to be poor or anything like their parents. All they know was, hey, we've had money, and then of course, their life is going to be different. When you're poor, you just had to defend on yourself. You had to keep yourself out of jail. You had to be responsible. You had to get up every day on time. But when that's not the case for your children, that they don't have to really struggle to survive. They just, if you're lucky, you can get your children to understand that. But if you can't, if you've, really bail them out every time, they're going to have their own struggle. Once mom and dad are gone, they inherit the money. The money probably will not last because they don't know to do the things to keep the money. Maybe they'll figure it out. You never know. I mean, we all have a choice in life as we get older to make different, choose to do things differently than our parents did, or to do things that our parents did that were successful, especially if they're good examples. But it's kind of really one of those things that, on the one hand, success can be subjective. On the other hand, there are some paths to it. I listen to Larry Elder's YouTube videos, and he featured a video with some clips from Denzel Washington. One of them was Denzel Washington, giving an address in 2015 to, I believe it's Riddle College. And he's telling the students there about, how to get by in life. And, he basically said the same things: hard work, do the best you can, faith in God, and just keeping that mindset in your head, and I find that very interesting because if you've not heard of Larry Elder, he is a black man, um, African American, if you want to call him that. I just prefer to call him an American. But his standpoint is that, there's this rhetoric that's been purported out there, and to the African American community, that it's about, all the African Americans being told that they're victims of systemic racism and everything else like that. And, I don't really think it's a thing. And I think what is being described as systemic racism is probably something else. Something that isn't really in the category of systemic, but systemic sounds worse. Which is another thing I could tell you. It's about rhetoric that with their current political issues, both sides of the story is saying, sensationalist, exaggerated things, outright lies in a lot of cases. But I find listening to men like Denzel Washington and Anthony Brian Logan and Larry Elder and Morgan Freeman to be enlightening and making me aware that there is a different school of thought amongst people of color. And there is such a thing as a conservative person of color that I share the same values and thoughts with. And first time I came across these men, it was on YouTube, and listening to them speak, I was very much encouraged. The current rhetoric, the popular rhetoric, is there is this race war. And I personally, I grew up around racism. There was a time I didn't realize the difference until, going through school, I joined the military, and I started to realize, that some of the things that were said to me by, people that I grew up with in the area. I grew up in an area where the population was, of course, largely white. That's pretty much true everywhere. But there was a lot of Hispanics. Now, I will tell you, I'm very comfortable around Hispanic people. I grew up around them, talked with them, had friends when I was a kid that were Hispanic. Some of them, there was men that I knew, women I knew, who were Hispanic that I greatly admired. Did not grow up around African Americans. And it's an interesting thing. When I talked about earlier about, I think it's human nature to kind of seek out the things we're more comfortable with. I feel more comfortable around, other Caucasians, but I also feel comfortable around people who are Spanish or Hispanic, and then, I'm not, if I'm around somebody Asian or African American, I'm not used to that. But it's like a thing of, you do tend to still feel a little bit more comfortable to somebody who looks closer to the people you were around when you were younger. Um, I find myself I could be more comfortable around Asians, but Asians a lot of times remind me of Hispanics. Uh, the dark hair, brown eyes, and the lighter colored brown skin. Um, that being said, there are men very dark skinned that I have learned to be comfortable around because I've enjoyed their intelligence, their outlook on life. Um, there have been men I've just really admired. Um, Even felt a little bit of envy of because I wish I had the character that they did or do have. Um, I every time I hear about Denzel Washington, I am just always impressed by him. He just really seems to be who he says he is, and I respect that a lot. I think that's a very good trait for any man to have. Um, but and I do apologize if you're watching this and you're trying to understand what I have to say, because unfortunately my speech pattern is I tend to think of a bunch of things all at once and jump around from different places. So if there's any coherency you can gather from this, you might have to watch the video a couple of times. I don't know what else to say. Um, I kind of grew up with this naturally, and my father tended to jump all over the place. I try to be a little bit more cohesive about my thoughts, but I do realize I digress in the different avenues that I feel are related. Maybe not something seen by most people. And of course, I started this thing not really thinking of a solid straight line to follow. I think I've been talking about fortunes and race and rhetoric and the way people talk and think about certain things. I'll be honest with you, subjects that I kind of struggled with trying to figure out. Anyhow, this is kind of my first stream here. I don't know if anybody's ever going to see this. It'd be cool if people did watch it, but it just kind of is what it is. But not sure what else to talk about. Maybe I've said enough. I don't know. But I always don't want to say is that it's now 2021. I hope it's a better year for everybody. I hope a lot of the problems of last year are done and over with. I hope and I like to hope that the political situation will clean up, but I'm not entirely confident about that because I'm not real sure that the people who are in power right now are very wise anymore. I think there's just a lot of people who've lost touch. They claim they're in touch with the common man, and they're not. I think they really feel like they can just tell us anything, say anything to us to excite us, get us upset, angry, anything else like that, try to force us to vote certain ways to keep them in power so they can continue whatever they're doing. I largely think the U.S. government, a lot of governments have corruption. Our government is no exception. I do believe our government tends to be corrupt to, I guess it's like that old saying, absolute power or power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. there has been a lot of things said about, foreign interest and everything else like that. I don't disagree with it, and I don't really think any one side of the political parties or the other is, uh, immune to it. I also kind of think too that one of the difficult things about government is that while government is kind of put over to kind of control those of us who are not in government, there's not always very good safeguards to govern the governors. We govern the governed, but the governors themselves are not always governed. And it's kind of one of the problems that I think we as a human race have been struggling with for years. And I guess that actually introduces a new thought to think about. During this political period, there's been a lot of talk about democracies. A democracy, everybody kind of understands that. That's, the people rule. That's all of us getting together and deciding, by vote, what we're going to do. It is, by all rights, a majority rule system. It's also a system that can, potentially fail to achieve anything, especially if people become very fractionalized. There are some real cases out there. If you have time, look at the political structure of Italy. There are literally, dozens and dozens of different political parties in Italy. We talk about two-party system in the U.S. You can see what we can or can't get done. They're not doing any better, obviously. But they do try to create coalitions on particular issues to try to get things to go through, which technically is what, our government does, especially at the federal level. Republicans, Democrats crossing the aisle, that sort of thing, to work with counterparts to gather the votes they need to get, some legislation through or something like that. Ironically, as polarized as our politics has been, the irony is that we really need our government to work together. Fractionalizing does not get anything done. Unfortunately, the problem is that people fail to compromise, because the reality is it's just not going to get everything you want. I think, and it's a sad thing nowadays, and it's probably been an ongoing thing for, throughout human history. You just get people that like what they want, and they don't really care to compromise, and the truth is there's no reality where, any one group is going to get their way, because there's going to be some other group that doesn't want things that way, and they're not going to get their way either. It's just, there's just no way around it. And the people that do try, I would say those methods are very radical. Those are the methods that result in the persecutions, the murders, the genocide. You got Germans. You think about World War II, what happened to the Jews? They were made like they were basically scapegoats. The Germans did not fare well after World War I. They were, the thing about World War I is that it was basically Prussia and Austria that were working together. They went to war. They did have aspirations of world domination and things like that, or gaining as much power and territory as they could. Um, and you know, they were attacking other nations, and the other nations did not like that. And when the World War One was over, they really did quite, you know, a big number on them. Prussia ceased to exist as a country. It was divided up, and it was split up, and it was the German war machine was completely dismantled. And and here you have the German people, who are kind of an interesting people, anyways. Um, but that's another topic. But they're struggling. Their money has gone completely worthless. I mean, dirt was more valuable than the money. I mean, would you imagine going to buy a roll of toilet paper and you have to carry a wheelbarrow full of money to pay for it? That's how bad things got. It's insane. And they were ripe. They were desperate for any changes or anything else like that. And the irony is that Germany was a democratic government. It had a democracy, but this democracy was very fractionalized and divided. And one of those parties was the Nazi Party, and they took advantage of the situation. But the Nazi Party, and of course, you think about the current, political situation. One of the differences is that, from today and then, was the Nazi Party actually went out and took over the political headquarters of all their rivals. I had not seen that at all in these last 4 years. So trying to say that, one side or the other was a bunch of Nazis, and I don't think that's the truth. I don't see that. But the Nazis did that. They gained a lot of political power, a lot of numbers, a lot of seats. They weren't exactly completely successful. They didn't, but they got enough votes and everything else in there, and they pulled some other shenanigans that they managed to give Hitler more power. And then they went from actually being a democracy to being a dictatorship. But the birth of fascism. But the thing to remember too is we seem to think democracy is this, set in stone for everything. Democracy is just a concept. It's a governmental concept. A monarchy, an aristocracy, all these different types of governments are just a concept, a means of governing. And at this time, there were people that did not like democracy. If you look at France, they got rid of their kings and everything like that. But those were very turbulent years. There was very little peace. There was moments where the reigning peoples within this democracy of France actually instituted things that they called, the terror. And it was to bring fear to anybody that was their enemy, that opposed them. And that was democracy. And that's the thing to remember about a democracy. It could be bad. It really can. It could go really bad. It can make life horrible for people. It's not the, answer that's going to make everybody's lives better. Socialism is yet another governmental concept there. Um, Not one I completely agree with, because while I do kind of like the idea of protections, I don't like the idea of like seeing the government as a means to free things. Um, you know, the fact of life is somewhere along the lines, somebody has to pay for it. And if you think that the rich are going to pay for everything, they're not. Look at who's in power. It's not the poor people who go to Congress and everything like that. It's the people that are rich or who get rich people behind them. And those rich people get behind them because these people promise to do the things that the rich people have told them to do. It's kind of funny to sit there and listen to somebody say, we're going to tax the rich. This is actually, it's an age-old story. This is what was said in Russia when they were still under the Tsar. This was the concept they promoted. And they really did try to do it. But it just, the one thing that the early communists realized was that they were going to run out of money. And the way they tried to go about it was they tried to still maintain a free market, and they only, because communism ends up nationalizing a lot of things. So they decided they only really wanted to nationalize certain things. I can't really go into it at this point because I can't remember those exact details. But they also realized they couldn't, go across the board and nationalize everything. There's just some things they're just too expensive to do without money, or even some things you just shouldn't really do. A lot of countries that do have a lot of social services or socialized politics, a lot of them are reverted to turning things over to the private industry institution. I think Switzerland is always brought up about, there you have a socialized medicine and stuff like that. Well, yeah, they do, but it's being run by a private company, and which is kind of a point that competition breeds efficiency and better cost. It's just the thing. The same thing about survival. The biggest beef that people have about socialism is a lot of people start just, giving up and taking the money they can get for free. Why work when you can get free money, free services? Well, I mean, my personal experience has been, that I won't go into any details, but when you have a relative that has a choice between going to school and making better money that way, but they're given the choice of, well, they'll just get, if they just take free money. This particular relative did take the free money. This person could have been making a lot more money if they had finished school, but they quit school because they could get free money. And the family members of this relative, missed out. This relative had children that, were going to have to find a way to go to school on their own. Or, just receive less benefit from their parent than they would have if the parent had, been working at a real job. So there's some downsides. It's like you have to accept a lower standard of living if you want the free money, because you're not going to get, free money sounds great, but it's never going to make you a rich person. I mean, it's nice getting money you don't have to work for, but you're not going to get much. You still have to do something to make up for the rest. And if you don't, well, I mean, your quality of life is just going to go down. And if it ends up being the case that more and more people come underneath, have a socialist medicine or anything available to them, you'll see those services go straight down. It won't really change anything. I have been to England, and everybody knows free healthcare. But the problem with free healthcare in a system like that is socially they've only got a certain pot of money, and that's what the government allocates to them. It's determined by the taxes they pay. And in reality, you think you're not paying for your medical benefits over there. Well, you are. Their gas tax is 200%. And that helps pay for the medical and everything. 200%. Right now, gasoline is, for a gallon, about $2.30. If you're being charged at 200%, that's what the tax is based off of. That's like, 3 times $2.30. You're going to be paying about $6.90 a gallon. These SUVs and things like that are on the road. You'll start seeing them disappear because, who's going to want to own a vehicle that has a 24-gallon tank? And, you're talking, you try to fill that thing up, 6 times 25. 6 times 5 is, 30, carry the 3, 12. That's $150 to fill up a 25-gallon tank. And in England, they drive small 4-cylinder cars that you don't fill up more than 10 or 12 gallons at a time because you just can't afford it. It will change your quality of life when these things happen. It's something to keep in mind. Kind of forgot where I was going with that, or where it was before. But at any rate, I'm kind of coming up on an hour here, and it is very late. Surprised at how late it is. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get to sleep tonight. But want to wish everybody Happy New Year. Hope you remain safe from COVID. Again, I hope it's a better year this year. And take care. Bye-bye.